minutes to let the, well, we're being recorded. I'm going to give it just a couple minutes to allow folks to come in. And then we'll get started at just about 10:02, and right now it's 10:01. But I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry that I can't see some of you, but we'll get started very shortly. All right, so it's 10:02, so as promised, for the sake of time and staying on time, I want to welcome everybody. There's about 70 of us in the participants right now. We are being recorded. I want to thank you for joining us this morning, and I'm very excited, and I'm excited for this informative webinar on recycling dividends. It's the webinar program commonly referred to as RDP. I am Carrie Parcell with Mass DEP in Barnstable County. I am the Municipal Assistance Coordinator for the Cape and Islands, so I serve 23 municipalities as part of that district. I also have a couple colleagues here that are also Max. We have Todd Kep, who's going to be our behind-the-scenes IT guy. And also we have Susan Waite, who will also be a presenter as part of this presentation. So we will be hearing from her a little bit later. Todd, next slide, please. So as part of the agenda, obviously, we're going to introduce each other. We're going to have an introduction slide, sort of housekeeping, letting people know, please put the questions in the chat. If you would like to change your name, add where you're from so that folks can see that, that would be great. We're going to go into how your RDP funds have been spent and are being spent. We're going to look at some innovative ways and categories that folks have spent RDP. We're going to take a break for some questions and answers. And again, put those questions into the chat box. We're going to look at some newly expanded approved spending, as well as some changes to the RDP tracking that we put in annually in January. And then we're going to do some closing remarks and more question and answers as they come up, and that'll be the end of our presentation. Because it's being recorded, it will be distributed at the end of our presentation, at which point you should see it within probably 24 hours. Next slide, Todd. So this is just sort of a how-to Zoom tips and tricks slide. So please mute yourself so that there's no background noise. If you wanted to share video, which some of us will not be doing because Todd's got that taken care of for us, aren't we lucky? To rename yourself, you're going to go into the participants, you're going to hit that arrow, you'll see something that says rename, and then you can change that name. The chat box is right below as well. That's where you'll put your questions. If you have a question specific for a person that you heard speaking, so if you wanted to pose a question to Janine, if you will, just put at Janine and then write your question. And then Susan and Kathy, who will be assisting with questions during those 2 question and answer sessions, can direct it straight to that person. And then, like I said, we are recording this, so just final notification on that. Next slide. So what is the Recycling Dividends Program? Again, you will commonly hear this referred to as RDP in the world of acronyms. So what this is it's a grant fund that sits under the umbrella of the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program, also known as SMART. They are awarded based on best management practices that are already in place for programs that assist with or support reuse, recycling, and diversion that already you have at the curb or at your transfer stations. When you invest them, it helps to strengthen, expand, or newly implement future programs by way of innovative investment. Those investment practices can foster municipalities to earn more points every single year. Throughout the presentation, you will hear from municipal speakers on how they use their monies to reduce cost, earn more points, reduce waste, create regional programming, and support DEI communities. Next slide. So before we get going on our presentations, we have a couple of poll questions, which Todd is going to assist us on. And the first one is, do you know your current Recycling Dividends Program grant fund balance? And we're going to give you just a few moments here. And Todd's going to let us know when about 80% of folks have responded, and then he's going to show us the answers.
And we're at 80%. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
All right, great. Thank you, Todd, so much. So looking at this, this is great. About 42% of you say yes. 19 say no. And 38 said, I have a rough idea. All right, next poll question, Todd. All right, question 2. Do you know how to access your recycling dividends program funds? So this one's got a little bit more meat to it. So go ahead and read through those before you make a selection. And again, Todd will close up the poll and show us the answer around an 80% response rate.
Almost there, 71.
Thank you, Todd. It's always nice to have the tech guy or gal.
All right, it's slowed down to a crawl. So we're going to end at 75%.
All right. Okay. So this is good for us to know. So it looks like about 34 have full control. Some need some supervisory approval. Others need CEO approval. CEOs are typically town management, town officials, mayors, things like that. Authorization from a dedicated account, great. Grant fund, general fund appropriation, and there is a 13% for the other. Thanks, Todd. So moving on to the next slide, we have our next presenter. We have Janine Bishop. She's with Mass DEP, and she is the SMRC grant manager. And she's going to speak to us about how RDP funds have been spent. Janine, take it away.
Very good. Thank you, Carrie. Welcome, everyone. Again, I'm Janine Bishop, and I'm the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program, or SMRC grant manager. I oversee RDP and the rest of the SMRC grant items. I'm going to talk a little bit about how municipalities have been spending their RDP earnings over the years. Next slide. So what this slide shows is the history of RDP, the amount awarded, the number of awards over the years, and the average awarded for each year, showing 2014 through 2022. The figures for 2022 are what we have recommended to the Commissioner's office. It's likely that amount will be approved, but at this point it has not yet. So keep that in mind. When you look at the numbers, it's clear that there's been an increase in both RDP amount awarded and the number of awards issued over time. There's a small exception for 2021's award, and that's likely due to the 2020 COVID impacts. Remember, keep in mind that RDP funds are awarded for programs, activities, and best practices that were in place the prior year. So 2021's does show slightly lower than 2020. So you'll also note that this year's recommended amount is the highest at 3.36 million and 265 municipalities. This is a direct result of the reduction in the minimum number of points needed to be eligible for RDP. All that was needed was 1 point to be eligible. We did have one municipality that earned 1 point. We're hoping to see that number grow next year. So average awards too have increased over time, with the exception of 2021 to 2022. And again, that's a direct result of the elimination, or the reduction, I should say, in the number of points needed to get into RDP. It just means that the money was spread further amongst more municipalities, and we look at it as more municipalities will be able to improve their programs, reduce waste, earn more points over time, and with more points comes additional RDP funding. So we're hoping that this will see increases as time goes on. Next slide, please. This slide is pretty similar to the previous one. It shows amount awarded over 2014 through 2022. That's in the blue, and then the red shows the number of awards awarded, and big increase from 2021 to 2022, which we like to see. 265 municipalities are on our list for this year's awards. Next slide, please. So this one, sorry about the small font. Hopefully you can see it. We're showing yearly awards in this slide as well, but we're also showing RDP funds spent and carried over each year. The blue is the amount awarded, the green shows what was spent, and then the pinkish red is funds carried over. Before last year, the funds carried over far exceeded the amount spent, and it grew each year. As you can see, the pink line just increased over time. Last year, we had our RDP program manager, Will Ba, call municipalities, talk to them about their spending, encourage spending, answer any questions they had. The MAX 2 were encouraging spending, and it worked. If you note, 2021's spent was as high, or actually higher than awarded, and the amount carried over decreased for the first time. It's still pretty high though. We're close to 7 million in funds out there as of the beginning of this year for municipalities to spend. It's a lot of money. We want to see these funds invested in your programs. Next slide, please. Thank you, Todd. What we're showing here is spending categories that have been the most popular over the last 5 years. We totaled spending for each category, and what we have found that equipment is the category where most funds are spent, and that's 40% of spending is on equipment. Outreach and education was next with 15% of spending. And model program is third at 9%, and model program covers temporary staffing, so it makes sense that that would be one of the highest ones. So interesting numbers. Next slide, please. Now, this is my final slide, and what we're showing here are spending trends over the last 5 years from 2016 to 2021. We broke down each spending category by year. 2016 spending is shown on the very bottom in blue. We go up through 2021, which shows in orange, and that's at the top of the chart. And some interesting things to note here. School recycling, that's the third from last bar. And you'll note that 2019 spending for schools, shown in purple, was pretty extensive. And we believe this is due to the fact that grant eligibility requirement was changing in 2020. We announced it to municipalities that school recycling would be a prerequisite and an eligibility requirement, and the schools got ready. They got prepared for recycling by spending on schools. And on the same note, you'll notice that school spending in 2020, which is the aqua color, and 2021 is the top of the bar with the orange coloring. School spending was very low. This is an obvious reflection of the pandemic. One more point to look at is the toxic reduction, which is the last column. 2021 spending far exceeded, actually 2020 and 2021 exceeded past years, and that is because we feel this is due to the fact that we removed some of the restrictions on allowed spending for HHW events. We allowed RDP funding to be spent on first events, second events, setup fees, and the entire cost of HHW events, and municipalities took advantage. And with that, my contact info is at the next slide. Next slide, Todd. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have, or put a question in the chat. And with that, I'll pass the baton over to Carrie. She'll introduce our municipal speakers, and thank you.
All right, thank you, Janine. Great information and lots of information. You can see where some of the funds are allotted for spending through Janine's presentation there. So that's been fantastic. Todd, can we flip to the next slide, please? So how does RDP investments, how do they strengthen municipal programming? And so that's what we're going to learn today. That's some of the meat and potatoes of our presentation. So the first speaker that we're going to hear from is Kingston. And I'm proud to introduce Jean Landis Nauman, Chair of the Kingston Recycling Committee. Jean, you're on. Next slide.
Good morning. I'm going to talk about Library of Things. And what is a Library of Things? It's a collection of objects loaned, objects that are used occasionally, but perhaps are cumbersome to store, seldom used. People don't want to purchase them. The items are borrowed from your local library, just as you would a book or a magazine. And it's an important component of what is now called the sharing economy. It also earns you some RDP points. Next. I will go through some of the categories that we have found frequently used by libraries. I won't go into detail of each one of these so that I can keep this presentation short. I believe this production is going to be available to individuals so that you can look at it in detail later. But some of the things that we have found being used are arts and crafts. This includes all kinds of different things with sewing machines and jewelry repair. Under electronics and technology, e-readers, tablets, laptops, mobile hotspots, scanners, video games. There's all sorts of things that can go under this category. Next. Musical instruments. Believe it or not, a lot of people want to try out some sort of musical instrument, but they don't want to purchase it. So this gives them an opportunity. Also includes sheet music and tuners, amps, and other educational resources. The following one is one that I think a lot of people are interested in using, and that's kitchen equipment. Special things such as a popcorn machine or ice cream maker, cake pans. Say you want to bake a special cake for your child or grandchild, but it's not something you want to hang on to. Air fryers and blenders, which I find rather interesting. Next. What we have done here in Kingston is also support through the Agricultural Commission, a seed library, and it can contain regular seeds or heirloom seeds. Because of the difficulty in saving seed, our library only allows for borrowing and using, no returns. You really have to know what you're doing if you're going to save seeds for someone else to use. There's also agricultural equipment such as landscaping tools, gardening supplies. We here have a postal digger, which has turned out to be extremely interesting and useful. Home tools such as cameras, leak detectors, air quality meters, energy meters are certainly very helpful to use periodically, but not something you probably want to purchase. Next. Recreation. Who might want to try out fishing, so they borrow a fishing rod, or they just want to have some sort of special party. I know a friend of mine had a graduation party, and she borrowed some of the croquet, badminton, and there was a large, I believe, checkers game that she was able to borrow. There's other things such as karaoke machine or boombox. In Kingston, one of the most popular items is a disco ball. Under science and maker, there's lots of different kits and toys, laser cutters, digital microscopes and telescopes, light meters, that sort of thing. Next. Under tools, Hand and power tools, not every library is comfortable loaning these out due to the liability. More frequently used are stud finders or extra long measuring tapes. And again, I've got the post hole digger included in there. Under toys, our library has a pretty extensive list of jigsaw puzzles and games, and I understand that they're widely borrowed. Under other, I had to look up what tie libraries are, and this is neckties for job seekers. And we also have museum passes or park passes, and then role-playing games such as Dungeons and Dragons. Next. Okay, the Kingston Recycling Committee first spoke to the Kingston Public Library Director about library things, as well as Seed Library many years ago after we heard of what other libraries were doing, both here in the US and internationally. And then the library began a collection, and in December of 2020, we had RDP funds available and asked if they needed additional funding. They gave us a list of items that they wished to purchase, and we made a gift of $2,000 to the library for this purpose. In addition to library things, we also have a laminator, golf practice net, metal detector, travel adapter, which again, you would probably only use once or twice. As the town had sufficient RDP funds, another offer has been made to the library, and we're awaiting their response after they reconfigure the front. Now, this is a picture of what they had in the lobby of the library to display some of the library things. Next. And this is what it looks like now as they're trying to get ready to reconfigure, and they plan on using this space to exhibit more of the items in the library of things. Unfortunately, our library's website is being upgraded and does not have a full listing of these items, but I have looked at the web pages of several other libraries, and they have extensive lists. Salem is just one example of one you might want to look at. Sharing these items eliminates the cost to borrowers and reduces the number of items sitting idly in someone's house and subject to disposal. This certainly allows fuller use of infrequently used items and reduces the need to manufacture multiple items. To me, this is a very important part of our mantra of reduce, reuse, and recycle. Thank you very much.
And the slide here is Jean's information. Jean, fabulous presentation. Thank you. I saw a couple pop-ups in the chat. Excitement around the Seed Library and the disco ball. So great job. Thank you. Wonderful. Next slide, Todd. So we're going to be moving on to Mary Manisi. She is with the City of Medford's DPW office, and she is their office manager. Mary, if you're ready, take it away. And Miss Mary, you are still muted, my dear. Happens to all of us.
I know. The Medford DPW has a new addition to the DPW yard located on James Street to make single stream recycling easier and more cost effective for the city and its residents. Back in December 2020, a new 35-yard compactor was installed where the previous recycling dumpster was located. By automatically crushing materials inside the bin to provide additional space, the compactor holds more than 5 times what the previous bin could store at one time and will save the city up to about $30,000 annually in hauling costs. The previous dumpster had to be hauled off-site more than 150 times a year. With the new compactor, it will only need to be taken off-site approximately 52 times a year. It would have been less, but due to the COVID, people with all your, getting their food and delivery boxes and all that. So instead of having the compactor emptied like twice a month, it is emptied 4 times a month. From July 2020 through June 2021, the city saved $27,776. And then from July 21st through June 22nd, 2022, the city saved $28,000. And the compactor was purchased using funding from the grant from the DEP. Having additional options for Medford residents to recycle has been incredibly valuable for the community. The recycling compactor is available to Medford residents 24/7 to dispose of excess recyclable materials, except between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. each Wednesday, when it's taken off site to be emptied by the waste management. And when the bin is full, residents can run the compactor by opening and closing the door 3 times, consecutive times. This is a sign on, there is a sign on the compactor door that provides instructions for residents' convenience. And we also have a video tour on the website, the Medford website. And that's that. Thank you.
I'm muted. See, I did the same thing. Mary, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great numbers, good information, very on point. I appreciate it. Next slide on some more cost reduction recommendations from the DEP. So this is something that our dear Kathy Mirza had pointed out to us. So I'm going to speak on it because I am the MC. However, Kathy gave us this bit of information, so we thought we would share other ways to reduce costs. So Mass DEP looks and recommends other third-party indexes to help you stay informed about the value of your materials. This is insanely helpful during contracting, and some of you have probably been part of those contracting workshops with Gail and Julia and other folks that have held them. Invoices can tend to be slightly confusing and not very transparent. So that's why these sorts of indexes can help you go through those and read through them. What Mass DEP subscribes to themselves is the recyclingmarkets.net. And this helps Mass DEP stay current with recyclable commodity markets so that they can follow the average market value, the AMV. Municipalities can use their RDP funds to purchase this, their annual subscription, and it's less than $400 a year. And the information will allow you to be more informed and up to date and be more informed party when contracting with your vendors. Up next slide, we have the City of Lynn. Our speakers are Lisa Nierich, DPW Associate Commissioner, and Laura Lozzi, the Head Clerk for the City of Lynn's DPW. Ladies, take it away.
Thank you so much for the invite. My name is Lisa Nierich, as Carrie had said, and we do a billboard campaign with our RDP points. How do we educate the people in the City of Lynn and others around the surrounding communities? So with the RDP points, this is a prime location. It's located on Western Ave at North Federal Street. This is the billboard that is very hard to get. So we booked it for a year, and we did a lot of promotion for recycling on this billboard. And we did the mattress recycling program, the campaign, and it was a big help to our department for kicking off this past October, the mattress recycling calendar, mattress recycling campaign. Next slide, please. So we do different campaigns. We did a Christmas one, downtown Lynn, try to get the local businesses when people are out there shopping, know what they have to do for recycling after Christmas. And billboards are expensive, as we know, but it's a best way to promote and advertise and educate the people of Lynn. There's various locations that we choose from. We have 3 locations that we work with. Wyoma Square, as I said, Western Ave at North Federal, and our downtown area. It's visible. It attracts to a lot of people that come and visit our city. The artwork is designed by Clear Channel. We have a contract with Clear Channel. We rent the boards for a year. We rent the boards for months. It's $150 for production of the artwork, and then for rental is it fluctuates on the cost and the location. Next slide. So obviously we know that the campaign for recycling is no food liquids and no tanglers and linens and stuff, but these are our advertising that we place on the billboards throughout the city. Next slide. These are, like I said, education is important, and this is another traffic area within the city with people coming in and out, and that's about it. It's very short and brief. Do you have any questions? No. So again, this is another traffic area, Weston Ave, but this is the billboard that we use a lot in our city to advertise. That location, like I said, Wyoming Square. And you get the people coming in and out of the city from Saugus, Revere, Swampscott, Nahant, people coming in the city, CLM. So it's a heavy traffic area, and that's where we did most of our promotion at this billboard. And like I said, it's important with these IDP points to help us educate residents of Lynn and surrounding communities. We do advertise into the papers, but we felt like the billboards were the big push for us and letting people know about education of recycling. Is there another board?
All right, Lisa, Laura, thank you so much for the information. Fabulous imagery, fabulous use to the RDPs. This is a wonderful campaign, and we often forget that sometimes our municipalities often reach other municipalities and other visitors and seasonal folks that come to visit us. So it's great that there's a broader reach as we use these RDP points to move ahead and to reduce costs and to earn more points and to create waste reduction. This is fantastic. So Todd, next slide. Oh no, it's me. You guys have to hear from me again. As the MC. As the municipal assistance coordinator for the Cape and the Islands, we have some innovative spending happening, and it's Barnstable County and it's regional, and we do try to include the islands, and they are inclusive of some of the things that I do. But we're all sort of on an island sometimes when we're working through this stuff. So most of this is just Barnstable County. I do want to preface on these particular collection events. RDP funds are either supporting the program in total, or they started out as Mass DEP SMRP grants. So RDP has played an important role for the fact that these programs are able to continue every single year, whether or not they're short-term, long-term programs or something that we happen to have all year round. Todd, next slide. So the first one is the annual latex collection event. It started out as a SMRP grant back in 2017. I had visited Recolor, which used to be named under a different name. I think it was called the Paint Exchange, if I recall correctly. This is Tanya. They are now Recolor, and she comes to our one pop-up event. So after the grant ended, municipalities can use their RDP funds to support their residents to show up to this event. We tandem it with the Dennis hazardous waste collection. So basically what we do is we ensure that residents that have latex only go to one section of the line and one section of the arena. And then the other folks who have, well, Dennis residents showing up to the hazardous waste event that also have latex paint go into one line, so that we're ensuring that there's segregation of folks that have latex only that might be visiting from a Provincetown or a Truro or even Falmouth and Dennis, to Dennis residents that want to participate in both the paint and the hazardous waste event. So this is accessible to all 15 Cape towns. Next slide. So the boat shrink wrap collection, it started out with a grant from the Woods Hole Oceanographic program. We partnered with them back in, I think, 2018, 2019. So we've been doing this annually. Now it's supported by RDP grant funds. We have 5 collection sites. There are 5 municipalities that actually support through their RDP funds to support the fact that 15 municipalities are allowed to come and drop off their boat shrink wrap. That's my colleague Tara at the extension office here at the county. And what happens is we have these 5 collection depots. They use our RDP funds to help pay for the tipping, the transportation, and the bailing of these materials. And then we allow 15 municipalities to bring in boat shrink wrap, and that's inclusive of boatyards and marinas as well. So RDP has been integral to this program after the grant funds ended with Woodsville Oceanographic Institute. Next slide. Holiday Strandlight Collection. So this is really sort of a free program all these programs are free for the residents, although we know services aren't free. There's always some funding on the back end. So basically what happens here is the strand lights are collected at all 15 drop-off centers here on the Cape, and some of the islands do this as well as part of their swap shop collection during the holidays. There is Brockton photoed here because the recycling coordinator there reached out to me and we had a conversation about how easy and quick it is. You just have to have a vendor that's willing to accept them and actually recycle them. The center photo is myself thinking for the first time ever when we did not have AmeriCorps to help assist me with this program, collecting, and my trunk is absolutely stuffed and packed. And that's not even half of a 96-gallon barrel. So when you look at the red container on the side, that's literally probably nearly, I think, about 700 pounds of strand lights. So I did have a season where I collected about 6,000 pounds, 3 tons on my own. And it's not easy and it's not fun, but it's worth it every step of the way. Next slide. The Cape also has 15 municipalities as part of Barnstable County, and 10 of them have drop-off source separated food waste at their transfer station. The images here are really sort of just to point out that it's very easy. You don't have to have a closed off shed. You don't have to have doors. You can have it open and out in the light. The thing is to seal it and to have a water source nearby, and you definitely want outreach and education. So RDP, these towns use their RDP funds so that they could pay for the collection, the tipping, the containers themselves, and the outreach and education so that their residents know what to bring when they're source separating their food waste. Hopefully sometime in the future, we'll see all 15 towns have this accessible. Nantucket already has something that manages their food waste as well as the vineyard for all 6 towns of Dukes County. Next slide. And processed glass aggregate. So lovely Brooke Nash and Chad are here in this photo. I wish I had a better glass photo of the pile. I didn't at the time when I was sort of putting all this together, which I can't believe because I've taken a million photos of this. So 5 Cape towns participate. And as many of you know, back in 2018, the sort of glass markets basically were eliminated, they disappeared. And so this was sort of a next best management practice for recyclable glass. So the town of Dennis applied for a processed glass aggregate grant, and 5 municipalities, some of them already source separated their glass and some decided to get a grant container funded by Mass DEP. The RDP funds are here to be able to pay for the crushing and the reuse and renewal of the processed glass aggregate in Cape side and actual Cape programs. The town of Orleans used this processed glass aggregate with one of their vendors as fill for their sewage project. So it's a really great program, and it continues, and it's been in place since, I believe, May of 2019. Next slide. And just because 5 towns participate does not mean that the rest of them cannot. It's just it's sort of a personal choice for the municipalities and when they decide what they would like to do with their glass and their vendors. And Eastham has space for mattress collection, and what we're really trying to do is we're providing access and resource. And so RDP funds can pay for the disposal of these recycled products to Rhode Island, as well as pay for the transportation. And the lower Cape towns have smaller year-round populations. I mean, we boom in the summer and the shoulder seasons, but we really have sort of smaller towns. So by Eastham having the space and availability to provide a container for these towns to come in and be able to bring their mattresses from their residents is a really great resource and program. And we really like the resource sharing that we can do here on the Cape and Islands. It's a really collaborative setup around here. So it's a very prideful thing to have, and we're happy to have it. And if you have any questions, next slide, I believe that's my contact information, although you will be hearing from me a little bit more during the rest of this presentation. Thank you. Up next, we now have our final municipal speaker is Meg Hebert. She is the waste reduction manager for the Greater New Bedford Regional Refuge District, and she will be speaking on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. So we have a lot of bilingual information that we hand out. So in New Bedford, we use the Spanish and the English together, and we have that available on our website. And next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So like this is an example of something that's available on the City of New Bedford's website. So it has the English, the pictures, and the Spanish. And so that does help earn RDP points for the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And next slide, please. So this is our awesome bag. I really love this. And so it's very durable. So one thing to mention, if you ever do make one of these to hand out at multifamily houses, apartment complexes, public housing, you do want to make a nice durable bag so it can keep lasting for a long time, which this one has. And you want to put only core items on there that are strong in your recycling program. So over time, you're not having items on there that are no longer in the program. And when we hand these out, we describe to the residents how there's a handle on the bottom of the bag. So you shake the bottles, cans, paper, cardboard out into the carts, and then you keep the bag. So this is a really great tool. And so instead of handing out lots of flyers or using lots of paper, this is an awesome tool. And on the side, we've got some of the major no's like the plastic bags and the plastic wrap, and we've got our contact information on another side of the bag. And so when you're coming down, if you're up in a multifamily home, you've got to come down the stairs. It's a much safer way to get the recycling down the stairs. You can hold the bag in one hand and hold the railing on the other side. So this, as you can tell, really impressed with this bag to help carry the recycling down to the carts. And we did, as you see, put the pictures and English and Spanish to help this be more inclusive so more people can get the information about the recycling. Next slide, please. This is an example of a bilingual poster for schools. And so this is also an example of a way to spend some RDP money. So it only cost $109 to make 100 posters. So this has gone over well. The schools have appreciated this. So getting this into the schools. And then since I also work with Dartmouth, just to mention, we had bilingual information given out electronically through the Dartmouth schools. They have a cool thing called the electronic backpack that they can send flyers to all of the families. And so that's really great because we didn't have to print out those particular flyers. So that was a really cool thing. Next slide, please. And this is a video in Spanish, and thank you so much, Todd, you put that on so that it can play. So if you don't mind playing a little bit of this video, so this will show how we did make a recycling video. This particular one is in Spanish, so thanks, Todd.
Su papel, latas y botellas se convierten en nuevos productos. El reciclaje proporciona muchos trabajos y ahorra espacio en los vertederos locales.
Para convertir los reciclables en nuevos productos, todos debemos colocar los artículos correctamente en nuestros carros de reciclaje y esos artículos deben estar limpios.
En New Bedford estamos a la altura del desafío.
Thanks, Todd. So that's great. That shows an example. That's Jessica, our awesome recycling enforcement coordinator here in the City of New Bedford, and Luisana was also featured in that awesome Spanish video. And next slide, please.
Puede ayudar con solo 3 pasos sencillos.
Our next slide will be our Portuguese video. And so we won't, just in the interest of time, we won't play this, but this is MJ and she's our awesome Portuguese speaker. So we also have this so we have this video in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So it's our, basics of recycling. And next slide, please. And just to show that there's a whole bunch of us working on all these projects, I just made a slide of some of us on the team, and the folks on the top are from the city of New Bedford, and those on the bottom are from the Greater New Bedford Regional Refuse Management District, so that we all work on this. Marissa actually is the waste reduction manager. I'm the waste reduction coordinator, and Janet works with us all the time and with all of our outreach, and John and Jessica are out on the streets. Also, I didn't mention one of the first slides, that decal, one of the Spanish and English informational flyers is also made into a decal. So that goes on the top of all the carts. And if you ever do use money to go ahead and get decals, make sure you get ones that are made for outdoor use, that can handle the UV rays. We've been through ones that weren't protected from the UV rays or from the weather, and then they do start to fail relatively quickly, like, within 4 months. So that's not so much fun. Then you have to peel those off and put on new ones. So there's some tricks to learn about, making sure they're laminated and UV protected. And then Mark is our awesome attendant at the recycling center. So he's helping us with all kind of new programs like the food waste drop off and all kind of cool stuff. So I think my last slide is the contact info. If anyone has questions. Oh, no, we're gonna have a few more ideas on how to spend the RDP money. So when you are hiring, or if you do get to hire a recycling coordinator, someone who's bilingual, that is obviously a humongous help. Jessica is totally fluent in Spanish, so she can help people over the phone and in person. So that's fabulous. And then I spoke about the durable bags, and I mentioned, definitely have your core information, so you're not stuck with any items that go out of the program. You don't want to have to deal with that. And that, like I mentioned, really helps people it helps anyone, any resident, but the people in the multifamily homes, it's a really great tool. And then also you can spend money on paying for translation service through a private translator. And just to mention, make sure that any expenditures that you do go for, make sure they are on the Mass DEP's list of approved spending. So that way you don't run into any issues on that. And next slide, please. Yeah, and then there's my email and phone number if anyone has any questions. Thank you so much.
Great, Meg, fantastic. Love it.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. And I'm sure Will and Janine are applauding your plug on make sure it's on the spending list so you do not run into issues later. So we will be hearing about that expanded list and some new reporting. In the meantime, we've got Miss Susan Waite. She's going to take over the chat box and go over any questions, comments that should be addressed. We are slightly ahead of time. Yay, never happens. So Susan, with Kathy Mirza as her backup, take it away on question and answer time.
There, everybody. We got a couple of questions first about the Library of Things, and I just want to point out that Jean, while she is the chair of the Recycling and Waste Reduction Committee, she is not directly involved with the Library of Things. So if there are other people in the audience who have more experience directly with the Library of Things that might be able to answer this question, that'd be great. But Jean, do you know how people get around the power tool liability issue with the library and in the Library of Things with the borrowing?
I have heard that some libraries, excuse me, have you sign some sort of waiver. We're not sure that that really relieves the library of the liability. So I think that's one of the reasons our library has not gone forward with that type of item.
Does anyone else have experience with the liability of power tools in a Library of Things? No. Okay. So the next question is geared for Lisa and Lynn. There was interest in knowing about the range of costs for the billboards because costs can be affected by size and location. Can you share a little bit more about the costs that
Sure. For a 4-week rate, it's depending on the location again, could range from $1,700 to $2,000. And that's just for 4 weeks. And production cost is about $150 to $300, depending on the size of the billboard. We deal very close with Clear Channels for any of our campaigns, the use of the billboards.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Thanks, Lisa.
you're welcome.
Carrie, who do you use to recycle the string lights? People mentioned some scrap metal recyclers, but they wanted to find out how you found your vendor.
Right. So when you separate strand lights from other scrap metals, which is totally appropriate to put it into the scrap metal pile, especially year round with other strand light situations. If you source separate it, what happens is they get more material value for the iron and the copper within those strand lights. So they strip them and then they were able to use that. So again, I normally use AmeriCorps. So they were part of the program last year as partnering for the collection. And we took it to S&J ESCO, which is a scrap metal and other type of material recycler here on Cape Cod. And then those materials were diverted to New England Recycling, which is off Cape. And I believe they've been bought out or, acquired by either Waste Connections or Waste Options or something like that fairly recently. And so they take them and they're actually the processor that finds, that strips the plastic off and then accumulates and collects and recycles those, the lead and the iron and the copper that are inside of those strand lights. So you just really have to find somebody that's willing to take it. And typically the value is great. So it's free, or sometimes they'll even pay you for the tonnage.
Great. Thanks, Carrie.
You're welcome. Thanks,
Mary in Medford. Is the compactor in Medford for all recyclables or just cardboard?
All recyclables.
So you have a single stream
Yes.
facility?
I did put that in my presentation today because somebody did mention that the other day. So yes, it's single stream.
Great. Great. And back to Jean in Kingston. Any problem with how clean items are when they're returned from borrowers? And is breakage a problem?
I would imagine that breakage can occasionally be a problem. They do have volunteers who are meticulous in reviewing every item that's returned, including making sure that all of the puzzle pieces are there, all of the game pieces are there. So it does take some volunteers to help with limited library staff to make sure that the item coming back is complete and reusable. I'm not sure about what activities they follow as far as making sure things are clean. And I'm not sure who they have review some of the items to see if they're still workable. Again, I would have to refer back to the library for that type of information.
Great, thank you. And back to Carrie, can you explain how the cost sharing works with the mattress recycling depot?
Oh yeah, so the town of Eastham is the host because they have the ability and the spacing. So it's sort of land space capacity. So what they do is when a municipality brings in their mattresses, there's a bill of lading. So when they count the collected mattresses from the municipality, there's a double count at Eastham. So when they're dropped off at Eastham, so there's sort of like a 3-check balance. So Truro, for example, says we have 35 mattresses. They come to Eastham, Eastham confirms that. And then when the vendor drives up, they confirm that Truro had 35 mattresses and it's signed off and signatured through the bill of lading. And that's the same for each town that uses that particular depot. And what makes that resource share really great is that the vendor who comes and picks up the mattresses not only ensures that their 53 yard trailer is full, but that they don't have to go all the way down to Provincetown, Truro, etc. They can stop in Eastham as sort of their last stop on the Cape. So it creates a little bit of environmentalism, some sharing, some collaboration through transportation and time and things like that.
Thanks.
If that answers the question.
Yep, I think it does.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks who have piped in about the power tool situation. It looks like there are different ways to handle it. Some municipalities don't allow power tools in their in their library. Others have say that the MIA Muni Insurance Company is a good resource for checking into that situation. Do we have any other questions for our municipal speakers?
If you do, please put it into the chat box. Susan's doing a great job following along. All right, it looks like we're ahead of the game. Good
We're
job,
good.
guys. Good job. All right, Susan, thank you so much for that. We are now moving on to Susan. So Susan Waite is our Western MAC. She's a colleague of mine through Mass DEP, and she's going to share and educate us on how she tracks RDP spending before she became a MAC. So she's going to share some tips and tricks with us. Susan, you're on.
Hi there. So until very recently, I was a municipal waste reduction coordinator, and I'm really familiar with both the fabulousness of having RDP funds at my disposal and the experience of completing the RDP annual spending report. A certain amount of information I'm going to present today will not be new to a percentage of the folks in the audience. Please bear with me. I encourage you to add additional learned wisdom and tips and tricks that you know in the chat box as we go along. Somewhere during my early years as a waste reduction coordinator, a colleague told me that reconciliation of grant funds did not have to be to the penny. Over the years, that piece of information took on a little life of its own. It went from being okay if I was a few cents off to being okay if I was $50 off. This is not good. I eventually learned the errors of my ways. I want to share what I've learned with you to prevent similar problems for you down the road. Next slide, please. Here's what I now understand. Every dollar of awarded RDP funds must eventually be accounted for. You can save yourself a lot of trouble by doing what's in your power to prevent discrepancies from occurring in the first place. Catching discrepancies will save you a lot of time and effort. I learned this the hard way. And then finally, keeping your account balanced will be a blessing in the event that an audit is performed by Mass DEP. Unfortunately, there are forces working against making the balancing job easy. Next slide, please. This is a list of things that tripped me up over the years. Identifying them is the first step towards reducing their impact. If you've experienced other challenges that have tripped up your RDP checkbook balancing over the years, please share them and any solutions you may have discovered in the chat box. Sometimes well-meaning people with access to the account will make changes or charges that you don't hear about until later, if at all. Sometimes purchases are coded and charged to the wrong account. Sometimes funds from grants are mistakenly combined into one account. For instance, money from a Sustainable Materials Recovery Program equipment grant might be put into the RDP account. Fortunately, this is pretty easy to identify. Finally, sometimes the purchase is mistakenly entered into your annual spending account 2 years in a row. Because financial information is reported using a fiscal year report and the spending report is a calendar year report, this can actually happen pretty easily. Of course, some of these issues are within our control and some are not, but they all work together to make life interesting in the weeks leading up to February 15th. Next slide. Because we have the most control over our own records, the easiest thing to do is to maintain excellent ones. What worked for me was to create a special working RDP spending file. In this folder, I placed previous annual spending reports, a copy of a current RDP approved spending document, and a simple expenditure tracking worksheet. During the year, I noted all purchases with RDP funds on the worksheet and put receipts or photocopies of all related invoices, or if an invoice was not involved, notes about my purchases in the file. In early January, I requested an RDP account report from the finance department. Because the spending report is a calendar year report, this can be a little tricky. You'll have to ask for the final 6 months of the previous fiscal year, January through June, and the first 6 months of the current fiscal year, July through December. Then, checking my records against the financial reports, I'd add up the amount spent in each RDP category and complete the annual report. Next slide, please. Here's a blank version of the worksheet that I created. For those that are interested, we'll share a link for this worksheet along with a recording of the webinar. First of all, I like to keep my account number at the top of the worksheet for easy reference when coding invoices or talking to people who are coding invoices. More than 90% of the municipalities that earn RDP funds employ a dedicated grant account, which is what is recommended by Mass DEP. Municipalities also report using enterprise accounts, revolving accounts, and grant accounts. Work with your city or town administrator accountant to understand the rules that accompany the type of account that your municipality employs for RDP funds. As I entered the purchases onto the spending log, I ignored the first column. And then come January, I'd check off the boxes only when I found them on the finance reports, verifying that what I thought had been charged to the account was actually charged to the account. Next slide. Here's a mock-up of a completed worksheet. You'll note that on the June 30th entry, that was not confirmed. This particular situation happened to me on more than one occasion. The local newspaper sends combined monthly invoices to a different city department for payment. And I never saw the actual invoice and was not involved with it being billed out or charged to accounts. So although my supervisor had approved the expense only because it was to be paid out of RDP funds, and I'd asked the department to charge the advertisement to my RDP account and provided the account number to use, after the invoice arrived in that department, the cost of my ad was coded to a different account. So while it took some time to figure out what happened, the good news was that the error was in my favor, as they were unwilling to make a corrective entry adjustment in the financial records. I ended up with about 500 additional RDP dollars. In this case, a happy ending. Next slide. For some of you, this final slide will belong in the Captain Obvious category, but if some of this is helpful, even to a few participants, it's worth noting. Because you have the most control over your own records, I encourage you to build an informational arsenal by faithfully noting your expenditures and keeping copies of your receipts and invoices. Your municipality's financial team and the reports they access are a second major resource. Make sure that your financial contacts understand that you need the reports because you are required to file a Mass DEP grant spending report. Municipal assistance coordinators have the advantage of having helped other municipalities with potentially similar issues. We're a great resource if you need help figuring things out. If you don't know who your municipal assistance coordinator is, we'll provide a link at the end of the webinar that will help you find out. So this is just one way to run your RDP checkbook balancing operation. I'm sure that some of you have created other methods that will work just as well. If people have offered other suggestions in the chat box, I'll make them available along with the tracking worksheet. With that, I will hand the baton to Will Mumba so that he can explain upcoming changes to the approved expenditures document and the RDP spending report. Take it away, Will.
Thank you, Susan. I've always said that you've been a hard act to follow. Thank you for such a great presentation. My name is Will Mba. I'm the RDP program manager within the waste reduction branch. I always say I have the most enviable job. You know, I'm excited to be part of this great event to talk about our enhanced approved spending categories and annual spending report changes. So we'll begin with our enhanced approved spending categories. Next slide, please. Thank you. So following up on the poll question, I think I saw 90% said they did not know how much they have, you know, as their RDP balance, and then 38% said they had a rough idea. So that is how much money out there we have on spend in municipal accounts. Over $6.9 million as of January 1st, 2022. And for those who indicated that they didn't know, their current RDP balance or have a rough idea, please reach out to your municipal finance department. Like compost, the funds will accomplish more good if they get spread around. That's a direct quote from Julia, by the way. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here's the current RDP spending request process. We ask that you review the approved spending categories list first. And if desired purchase is not found on the list, you send a special request to the RDP grant program manager, which will be me. And one special request allowed each year. RDP grant team reviews to determine if it meets grant objectives. And we will either at the end of the day, deny or approve your request. Next slide, please. So here's a new process based on our expanded list. Again, we always ask that you review the approved spending categories list, purchase item from the approved list that we've provided to you, and then we will update this list yearly according to feedback from our marks. And just a note that in cases where there's overlap, items and activities are listed in the category deemed most appropriate. But we ask that you refer to all applicable categories when searching for an item or activity. Next slide, please. Wonderful. So here's the RDP spending categories. It is the same as last year. Again, funds must be spent on the above spending categories. All expenditures must support the expansion of recycling and waste reduction programs. Operational expenses are not eligible, except with the exception of recycling, processing, and some other short-term expenses. Please consult with the list for further details on those expenses. We solicited feedback from external stakeholders, regional recycling coordinators to be specific. So the following slide will highlight some of the enhanced categories. Next slide, please. Thanks. So under equipment, we added infrastructure upgrade related to recycling equipment. Rentals of roll-off containers, compactors, and balers were added due to supply chain issues related to COVID. We also added alternative containers for in-home recycling collection at multi-family buildings. The list is pretty robust and detailed, so this is just a highlight. Next slide, please. Thank you. Under model programming, we had a consultant for local or regional initiative that will increase diversion through recycling, composting, reuse, repair, and toxic or hazardous collection. And for organics diversion related to compostable bag liners or biobags, we added PFAS certification. Next slide. Thanks. So for other/miscellaneous, in the past, we asked you to reach out to us for site improvement. This time we have rewarded it in such a way that it is up to you. You don't have to reach out to us for approval anymore. So transfer station or recycling site improvement that facilitate ease of access, safety, handicap access, contamination reduction, waste reduction, and or increased recycling. Next slide, please. So under outreach and education, we increased conference subscription and membership from $750 to $3,000 per year. Training and professional development for recycling staff is capped at $1,000 per year. I think that's some really great reward for your effort right there. Next slide, please. So also under reuse, source reduction, and toxic reduction. These are also self-explanatory and they're pretty detailed in our approved spending category. So tablet for, just to highlight that, tablet for inventory for swap shop, tool library, and library of things. So that is, we would need that. Next slide, please. Here's the announcement. High alert. This is the exciting part. The finalized approved spending category is currently live on our website. And my colleague, Kathy, will drop it in the link, drop the link in the chat in a moment for your reference. And we'll also attach, the finalized version to the recording when it's sent out. We'll continue to receive special spending requests through the end of the year. That is December 31st, 2022. Next slide, please. So now we'll talk about the annual spending report changes. So the annual spending report changes will look different come January 1st. This is a screenshot of the current annual spending report in ReTrack. The information is populated in the report, is awarded from each grant cycle, and accumulated amounts reported to Mars DEP as spent by your municipality over the years. I think it's a bit confusing. The annual spending report will be available January 1st. Again, like I said, this year it will look different. So here's how it looks currently. In the next slide, you will see how it looks. Thank you. So this is the much simplified version, which will reduce any confusion. All you will see is RDP funds carried into 2022 and RDP funds awarded into 2022 or in 2022. And then the total available for you to spend in 2022. So I think that clears out a lot of the confusion that most of our stakeholders have been having. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, attention, and all the work you do for your municipality in advancing our shared goals. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. So all of our speakers, all of our presentations, all of the information that we've shared today. So next slide, Todd, I believe we're kind of wrapping up. We've got some questions. I'm sure Susan's been following in the chat. So we'll go ahead with that and then we'll just do it in closing and we'll let you go be free and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Susan?
Thanks, Carrie. The key question that's come up is, will people have asked for you to clarify if people can still be in touch with you about expenditures if it's not black and white from the new revised spending document?
Absolutely. But we always ask that people should spend some time on that approved spending category. But it's really been thought through. And again, there's one special request that is still available through the end of the year, but we are always available as a resource for any clarification that anybody has on the approved spending list.
I'll also jump in and say that it's great to call your MAC too, that they're another resource to help you clarify if things are not clear for you on the document. I don't have any other questions at this time in the chat box. I encourage people to add them if they have them.
Great, Susan. Okay.
Any more questions?
We've got a great presentation. Do a repeat. Western Mass Towns. Life is different. That's you, Susan. All right, fabulous. I really want to personally thank all of you. I mean, the team wants to thank all of you. It's not just me. We've got Susan and Todd and everybody else. We've got some helpful links as part of the presentation. This will be sent out to the participants and you can share with other folks if you'd like. We saw a comment from the town of Yarmouth saying that I can't wait to share with her recycling committee. So that's fantastic. So Janine and Susan, Todd, Will being part of this team, Kathy for your support, and then to Jean and Lisa, Laura, Meg, for all being here, all supporting us. We really, really appreciate it. And if there's any information, we're here and that's it. We're giving you we're giving you basically over 30 minutes of your time back today. So thank you so much. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.